1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Welcome to NHL Quick Hits. I'm David Crosby here with Steele Roden to preview the second round series between the Boston Bruins and New York Islanders. The first round of the East Division playoffs saw two lower seeds pull off an upset, but frankly, neither result was all that surprising. The Bruins, they seemed to get stronger as the series went on against the Capitals. After dropping game one in overtime, Boston won two consecutive overtime games before thumping Washington by a combined score of 7-2 in those final two. Now, the Islanders took 6 games to dispatch the division-leading Penguins, but I think they did so in equally impressive fashion. After winning game one in overtime with rookie goaltender Ilya Sorokin in net, New York lost consecutive starts by Semyon Varlamov before returning to the rookie in game 4 and closing out that series with 3 straight wins. Now, this series will mark just the third time that Boston and New York have met in the postseason, and Boston is a huge betting favorite. The regular season results favor the Islanders, but if you look a little bit closer, the numbers tell a different story. New York beat Boston in their first 5 meetings, but the Bruins won the last 3, all of which came after they traded for Taylor Hall. Now, the Bruins have been a completely different team since the trade deadline. Hall has transformed Boston's offense. The Bruins scoring increased 25% on a per-game basis after that trade. Put another way, Boston scored 2.7 goals per game before, and the exact same rate that New York scored in the regular season. After they acquired him, they scored nearly 3.5 goals per game, a pace that would have ranked third for the season behind only Colorado and Pittsburgh. But still, of course, New York held Pittsburgh to only 2.5 goals per game in that first round. So with a similar offense here in Boston coming in, do you think New York can do the same to the Bruins' potent attack?
Yeah, I believe they can, and I think a lot of credit has to go to Barry Trotz since his arrival in New York. His system that he brings to this New York Islanders organization is just phenomenal, and we saw that when he was with the Washington Capitals when they won the Stanley Cup. I think the New York Islanders are actually one of the best teams in the NHL all around defensively. They just make sure that they're playing in the right position at the right time. Their forwards come back on the back check, making sure they pick up the man in the slot coming down the middle of the ice. So I truly believe that this is one of the best matchups in the second round, and probably that we're going to see in this playoff series or in this playoffs this year. I had Boston and the New York Islanders moving on to the second round, so I got it right on the nail here with the New York Islanders in 6 and the Boston Bruins. I was a little surprised that they won in 5, but I just think that the Islanders have what it takes to stop this juggernaut of an offensive team that the Bruins bring with all of their talent and superstar power that they have up front. You know, guys like Adam Pelech and Pulock as well. Scott Mayfield's been tremendous for the New York Islanders. So I think defensively they're really well set. And then you look at their goaltending situation. I thought both goaltenders played, really, really great for the New York Islanders. Obviously, Sorokin was 4 for 4, winning all 4 games for the New York Islanders in the 6. And even though Semyon Varlamov lost 2 of those games, I thought, relatively, he played, pretty great for those 2 games, even though one of the games was 5-4. So I think the Islanders have some great goaltenders in net. Sorokin was a perfect 4 for 4, like I said, a 1.95 goals against average with a 943 save percentage. Even though Varlamov was 0 for 2, I thought he was still great. So I do believe that they have what it takes. And we saw that in that first round against the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah, I think if they're going to beat Boston in their series, their goalies are simply going to have to be better than Tuukka Rask. Sorokin and Rask both had save percentages better than 940 and goals against averages under 2 in that first round of the playoffs. And of course, like you mentioned, New York still has Varlamov at their disposal. So when comparing these two teams in net, which team do you think has the advantage between the pipes?
Well, clearly Tuukka Rask is by far the better goalie when you're looking at his career, just his career alone, obviously with Ilya Sorokin being a rookie and this being his first season, getting some playing time. But obviously I think this is Sorokin, or obviously with this being Sorokin's rookie year, he's done a fantastic job for the New York Islanders. I'm going to give the advantage here to the New York Islanders just because Tuukka Rask has been the only one to play the 5 games for the Boston Bruins, while the New York Islanders have played both Varlamov and Sorokin. So with Jeremy Swayman, obviously with him being the backup goaltender right now for the Boston Bruins and not getting any game time, even though he had a great regular season, the playoffs just bring a different intensity and a different breed to the culture of what we see in the games. It's a lot more physicality, a lot more tougher, way faster in my opinion. So with that being said, I'm going to give the advantage here to the New York Islanders just because they've had both goalies in the playoffs playing a couple of games. But, with the experience of Tuukka Rask, it can go either way here.
Yeah, you can't go wrong. This is world-class goaltending at both ends. And of course, Tuukka Rask now has the best save percentage in NHL history by a goalie with 75 starts or more, which is absolutely incredible. The fact that he is still getting it done, and I mean, after a bit of a pedestrian regular season by his standards, it would have been good by a lot of other goalies. He's just stepped his game up again. This guy is such a great competitor, and I mean, it's going to be tough for both teams to score in this one, but we discussed Charlie McAvoy's breakout for Boston last episode, and their big guns up front all produced in that last series. I thought Brandon Carlo had a really nice series as well. He ranked second in total ice time and on the penalty kill. He led the team with 13 blocks and 7 takeaways, and he added 15 hits. So a guy that doesn't really get a lot of credit. You talk about a team that's really good defensively. I think he's a really key piece of that, and being able to play with a guy like McAvoy, who is more, offensively focused. I think it provides that balance. Are there any under the radar players on either team you think could have a meaningful impact in this series?
Yeah, well, you talked about Charlie McAvoy and Carlo right there, and I'm going to continue with the Boston Bruins defensemen. I thought Mike Riley and Matt Grzelcyk have been phenomenal for the Boston Bruins. Obviously, with that acquisition of Mike Riley before the deadline, he's found some chemistry with the Boston Bruins here, and it seems like he's settling in really fine. 2 assists so far in the 5 games. Grzelcyk as well. He's got a goal and 2 assists. So I think both of those guys have been really steady, really stable, and just been a great Mike Riley being a great fit for the Boston Bruins. So like you talked about with Brendan Carlo and Charlie McAvoy, their defensemen have been really stepping up in these playoff series in that first 5 games against the Washington Capitals. So I expect those guys to continue keeping up what they're doing, going up against this really defensive juggernaut of a team in the New York Islanders. And then over to the New York Islanders, you and I talked about this, obviously who's going to step up in the place of Anders Lee, obviously with that injury and him not being able to be in the playoffs for the New York Islanders. We talked about guys like Pajot and Beauvillier, and both, again, we both hit this right on the nail. They've stepped up big time for the New York Islanders. They both have 7 points they both have 7 points in the playoffs so far this series. But a guy who's, not supposed to be under the radar, he's a very superstar talent for the New York Islanders, and that's Matthew Barzal here. And obviously we know what he can do, but only having 3 assists so far in the first 6 games of the playoffs, I'm not saying that he hasn't played bad. He's been playing really, really good for the New York Islanders. He's getting back on the back check. He's setting up plays, obviously, with those 3 assists, but going against this Boston Bruins team in the second round, he's going to need to start producing some more points and getting on the score sheet. He's got a wicked shot. We've seen what he can do with that snapshot he has. I think if he's not able to get on the score sheet and score some goals for the New York Islanders, they're going to be in some trouble. So I'm looking at Barzal right now to step up a little bit in the second round.
That's going to be a great guy to watch, and especially, he's going to be up against Patrice Bergeron. So if he found it difficult to score in that first round, man, just wait until you face this amazing defensive team there in Boston. And I'm glad you brought up Jean-Gabriel Pajot and Anthony Beauvillier, because those two, Brock Nelson and Josh Bailey, they all had 6 even strength points in that series against Pittsburgh. And unless the Islanders' struggling power play can come to life, I mean, that even strength production is going to be key with keeping up with Boston in this series, because while both teams are, overall pretty good on the special teams, I think Boston has a clear advantage there over New York on the offensive end. So let's finish this out with a prediction. It was kind of funny to hear both coaches complimenting each other's teams, saying the other team reminded them of their own team and how similar they are. This is a really close matchup. Who do you think is going to come out on top?
Yeah, it's going to be really close. And obviously, like you said, the Boston Bruins are an offensive juggernaut, and they're going up against a juggernaut of a defensive team with under the lead of Barry Trotz. So it's definitely going to be one of the, this is in my opinion, like I said, it's going to be one of the best matchups we're going to see in these playoffs until the actual Stanley Cup finals, of course. But for me, I've got the New York Islanders in 7, and I just believe great defense generates great offense. And obviously, like you talked about, the power play hasn't been there for them, so those even strength goals are going to come key for when they're going up against this Boston Bruins team that has that brings that physicality and that tenacity in each and every single game. But the New York Islanders are not to be messed with either. They've got guys like Matt Martin, Clutterbuck, Scott Mayfield, like I mentioned before, who can bring the physicality, as well as some of their smaller guys for the New York Islanders, as well as Padjo's not afraid to get down and dirty. So I've got the New York Islanders going in 7 games, and like I said, great defense generates great offense.
I think I'm going to come out with a little bit of a bold prediction here. I think Boston is taking this series in 5, and that is not to downplay how good the Islanders were. I just thought in that first round, there were a couple times and even almost stretches of full games where I felt like the Penguins controlled the puck a lot more than the Islanders did. They just couldn't capitalize on it. And of course, they're not going to be facing your buddy Tristan Jarry here in the first round. So I think they're going to find scoring a lot harder to come by. So like I said, it could go either way. I wouldn't be shocked if the Islanders win, but I'm going to stick with the Bruins in 5. That's going to do it for today's preview. On behalf of Steel Road, and I'm David Crosby, and thanks for tuning in to NHL Quick Hits.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.